I ended up in a relationship where he came from more of like an upper middle class family. I was shown a really nice life. I'm like, how am I going to make sure I can continue the lifestyle that he showed me? I was able to get a job with a marketing firm for an interior designer. And that was a lot of fun. And so again, I was continuing to like see these lifestyles that people were living. And I'm like, yes, I need a piece of that. So I went back to school a million times, and that never worked out because I had 2 kids and I was single. And so, I was trying to provide.
It's one thing to have the qualifications and the skills and all that, but just I think you make yourself relatable when you share that.
I do believe, from feedback anyway, that's what sets me apart. Did you graduate with a psychology degree or whatever? And it's like, no, but I've always been interested in people, the way that we think for what we're doing. Like, why did you do it that way? Why do you think that way? So I've always had a natural curiosity for people. So I think that's also part of it.
Welcome to Mission Control. At Pearl to Design, we launch brands. But for now, let's launch right into this episode.
3, 2, 1, 0, and liftoff.
We've got a very special mindset episode. We have the special honor of having this executive coach. She's a business consultant. She enhances leadership and communication through emotional intelligence. And she's an executive coach and keynote speaker, the one and only Jessica Rivera. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
I am just thrilled because we were pre-gaming a little bit. We have a lot in common. We've seen our content right on Instagram, and I think we have some mutual friends. We've had obviously the Boss Babes and Brunch folks in here, and I know that she's connected to you, and it's just such a relevant topic. We were saying we were going to talk about how none of us make it on our own. As much as
so true, we
try to be the I got this. I think some of it might coming from the hood. Where we have this survival. Or seeing our parents maybe sacrifice so much, and then we're like, we're gonna do this, we're gonna make it. We have that, I think, as a people, but just in general,
I think it's an interesting balance, right? You have this desire to kind of, when you have that upbringing, you have this desire to pull yourself up by your bootstraps and do it all, and you are very wary about asking for help. But it turns out
it's a sign of weakness, maybe, for some of us.
I wonder that, culturally, I wonder about that. And yet, we also tend to come from families that are big that tend to have like a close-knit family
got your back.
Element. Exactly.
So which one is it?
Right. So I think, it just comes to a part where you want to be able to prove that you have the minerals, that you have that toughness, that grit.
Takes,
exactly.
Right.
So then, asking for help.
You were raised by people who didn't pay people for it. It was like, why are you going to pay someone for that?
Oh, yeah.
You can do it.
That's the
I
classic. I know how to do that.
Yeah.
Right.
What, are you a fool? You don't need to pay somebody for that.
Right.
That's a great point. I think my dad's like that too. Like he would never want to hire anybody to do anything because he knows how to do it.
Yeah.
Right.
And then all of us roll our eyes because we know it's not going to come out right.
And even if it does, even if you do know how to do it, it's time.
Yeah. That's right.
And I think for small businesses, we're in that space. Jessica's helping also, executives, but we're in that space too where it's like it can be to your own detriment to not seek help.
Yeah, I often tell my entrepreneurs, because I coach, high-level entrepreneurs, like that time that you're spending on that, how much is it truly worth?
Right.
Because that's the only thing you don't get back, right? Time is the true currency. And so when we think about it that way, but to your point about bootstrapping it, it's like we wear it as a badge of honor.
Yeah.
It's like, I got this. I don't need anybody, kind of that thought process. Is it people from the hood or people of color or a little bit of both or a little bit of everything? Yeah. But it's definitely ingrained in our culture.
Yeah, and I think it's also, and we're going to get to this too, it's not having the right mentors or the right role models or seeing, shout out to Chris, but seeing things from a higher elevation. Because I know I can speak personally, there was a time in the development of PD where I was holding on to the fact that I had built it with a severance package, like with a set amount of finance. And I think a lot of folks that are in this journey feel the same way. Like, I don't have any loans, or I did this with my own money. And it's like, great, you're putting your entire life at risk of running out of cash,
Right.
Or not making payroll. Congratulations. You're living very stressful life without doing what other businesses do, where they seek financing or have access to capital. And then they have this cushion, or they're able to acquire other businesses, or, like they're able to expand. And it took me a long time to really like find people like Carlton Highsmith, somebody that I deeply admire, who grew his business. He was in the printing business, but he grew it and sold it for millions and millions of dollars. But to get to that point, he had to acquire businesses that were $1 and $2 million businesses. And it's like, nobody's just going to pull out their debit card and like buy a business, right? You need that bank financing. But some of us don't learn that because we don't have the right people around us that have done that. So we don't know how.
It's so true. You end up having this without that mentorship. You wouldn't know that actually, like, there are so many financial moves that if you even if you could buy everything outright in cash, that wouldn't be the smartest financial move to make.
Exactly.
So people kind of get lost to, well, I know the best way to do it, and you kind of get locked in your ways. And you, like you said, when you're not operating from that higher elevation, you're missing that guidance, and you're actually limiting your own growth. You're limiting your own success.
Well, I think sometimes also we look for guidance and we take people as Bible, right? So, for example, Dave Ramsey's a good example.
Right.
He's actually an advocate for doing things in cash. Yet he built his own business on financing.
Right.
So, I think it's all about, yes, having the mentors, but also asking and seeking that information.
And what's right for you, or
whatever's right for you. Yeah.
Finding someone that's relatable to you, and that you can speak on this more than we can, but the mindset, because some of us may not believe we can until we see somebody looks like us that did it, and serves as your blueprint, or at least to say like, well, I'm not anything like these folks. They, they inherited money. Like most times, first generation folks, we inherit debt, or we inherit a closet full of tchotchkes or something that, whereas, the wealthy may inherit a network, like a book of contacts, or a trust or something to that nature. So it's also hearing or seeing, like, you need to see it so that you can achieve it.
Yeah. It's also putting yourself in those rooms though.
Yeah.
And seeking
It's true.
those people or that information. Because sometimes we're just stuck with our own little group. Like, one of the things I have conversations with people about, it's like, but that person doesn't get it, and I want to bring them with me. And sometimes we just have to allow them to get it whenever they want to get it, but seek other people, seek out different friends, go to networking events, go places where maybe it's not your usual group, but get yourself out of your comfort zone. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that's that famous saying that growth doesn't happen in your comfort zone. And it's so interesting how, it becomes, sometimes you get stuck in this echo chamber when it's just that same small circle that you haven't, they lack that experience or even just perspective. And so you miss out on the opportunity. I've been trying to impart this whole thing on my oldest daughter, who will soon be entering her sophomore year of college.
Huskies.
And exactly, so proud. But just encouraging her to join clubs and go to those rooms that you wouldn't otherwise have been, because opportunities aren't going to happen stuck in your dorm room, not meeting anybody.
Yeah.
And it's these seeds that you plant now that who knows how many years down the road, when you're looking for a job, where, oh, hey, you met so-and-so from such and such, and now you're able to connect those things.
That's a great point. And it's the diversity of, they say you're the average of the 5 people you hang out with the most. You could say it's the 5 books you read the most, or, there's the two extremes. There's like, let's just take somebody in college, for example. A person that never leaves their dorm room is not meeting people. Also, by contrast, a person that's like going out clubbing every night, they're meeting people, but they're meeting like the same type of people.
Right, exactly.
So you're going to be the average of, so it's finding with networking events or joining organizations, or if you're in school, joining clubs, it's all these resources there, and parents are spending all this money on these educations, but if the kids aren't like participating and taking advantage of all these resources, then they really aren't getting the most out of it.
I mean, when you think about right now, we have so much access.
True.
More so than ever before. So if you feel like you're stuck in the same circle, you have the same friends you've always had, that's great. But I don't know. Usually growth doesn't come from that same network that you've always had,
right.
typically.
Right. And this idea, too, that you have to leave some people where they are. Not everybody's going to have the dreams or aspirations or, we've had people in here that, we ask them what drives them. And sometimes it's that idea that they want to achieve more. And there are other people that are okay not, achieving as much. And you have to.
I don't believe that.
No?
No.
What do you think it is?
I think everybody wants to achieve more. I think there's beliefs that we have inherited that more is bad.
Yeah.
Like you
There's
get what you
guilt.
get and you don't get upset.
Yeah.
Or you have enough. How much more do you need? Like that kind of, but I think everybody wants more.
Yeah.
I think everyone wants more. Not everyone wants to work for it. There are people that
I don't
they
know
want
that's
more, but they don't want to
true.
work for it.
Well, that's so. I want to counter this because
I don't know
good.
that's true.
I want to counter the point in that. To your earlier point, you said there's all these people around you that you'd love to bring with you.
Yeah.
And you can lead a horse to water, but you can't force it to drink.
Correct.
There have been plenty of people who we came up with who had zero, like they wanted the more, but the impetus to put in the work, that
Right.
10,000
Wasn't
hours
there.
of professionalism
Yeah.
wasn't there. And just recently, Kevin and I were just having this discussion that we've seen so many, it's kind of scary how many people in our age group just aren't here anymore. They took a whole different path that we would have loved to bring them up with us,
Right.
but there wasn't. We can't do the work for you, and I think people do. I want
They
more.
do want more, but maybe it's the differences in what are they willing to do to get there.
Right. See I think that's it. And I think a lot of it, so yes, they want more. We can't force them.
Right.
Definitely not, because you'll end up going right back there with them.
Right.
So don't do that. But I think people want more. I can't force you there, but there's something stopping them. And typically that is mindset. It's something about either they no longer believe in their dream, they no longer believe that they can do it, that something is going on in there that they want it, but not enough, or there's not that they don't want it enough. They don't know how. They're worried about the how. So instead of thinking about, I'm going to get there, they're too worried about, okay, well, what's the next step? I don't know what the next step is, like that. And then that paralyzes them.
Wow. Well, let's end it there because we want to hear how you did it, because you clearly wanted more and you figured out the how. So when we come back, we're going to hear all about Jessica's story.
If you've got an innovation that you want to bring to the world, the first step is making sure you've got a great domain name. Visit shop.spacehost.pro to grab your domain name today and begin your new venture and your new business. Shop.spacehost.pro.
Please join me again in welcoming our executive coach and business consultant, Miss Jessica Rivera.
Yay!
The fans are going wild.
Standing ovation.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.
No, that was fun. That first segment, got a little heated, but it's good because this is what we need to do to really get down to the bottom of this. And we can't wait to hear how you persevered. So please tell us your story.
Well, thank you. Thank you again for having me. What's funny is that I love challenging conversations, right?
Yeah.
Because I like to challenge my own beliefs
Right.
and my own thought process. So I definitely will challenge a little bit. But, I was kind of starting off back in the day. I was a young mom. I had my first kid at 19. And I like to say I used to follow the fun. Right. I wasn't the best student. I wasn't the worst student, but I used to love to follow the fun. That was my only goal every single day, was to have fun. And that I did. And so I had a kid at 19. And I think what was interesting for me at that moment was that I really didn't, I was young. I didn't put a lot of thought into it. I didn't feel like, oh my God, this is going to destroy my life. I felt like, okay, I got this. Like, it's me and my kid against the world. That was kind of the thought process. Yeah. But luckily I did have a village. My parents are amazing. They really supported me and allowed me to have a life along with being a mom. I was never the type who was like hands off. They actually they actually offered, like, let him live with us for a little while. I was like, absolutely not. Are you crazy? So I was always a hands-on mom, but I always had my own life as well. And my parents, they really helped me, accomplish that, which was amazing. And then through that process, I ended up in a relationship where he came from more of like an upper middle class family, and I was shown a really nice life. And that was like, okay, I need to continue this. So when we weren't together anymore, I'm like, how am I going to make sure that I can continue the lifestyle that he showed me? And through that process, I remember, I lied and I got a job that I wanted, right? A marketing job for a
what do you mean you lied?
I lied on my resume. I lied on my resume. I lied on my resume.
Make it till you make it.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey.
That was the thought process back then. I lied on my resume, and I was able to get a job with a marketing firm for an interior designer. And that was a lot of fun. And so again, I was continuing to like see these lifestyles that people were living, and I'm like, yes, I need a piece of that.
Yeah.
So I went back to school a million times, and that never worked out because I had 2 kids, and I was single, and so I was trying to provide. But anyway, so then fast forward, I ended up in a sales position, which I was deathly afraid of speaking to people. I was definitely
You?
Yes,
I can't believe it.
I was definitely afraid of speaking in public. I would not do that. That was not me. I would tell, like, if I was at a family, I was at my mother's, I don't remember, my parents' 40th anniversary or something. And they were like, say a toast. And I'm like, okay, Vanessa, my sister, tell them what we think.
Like pushed her forward.
Yes, because she was the mouthpiece. She was better at that. I did not. I remember I took a sales class one of the times I went back to college, and I was like mortified. But I stepped back, and I after I did my sales pitch,
Because you got to do like role play.
yeah, and I was
Rejection, the fear of rejection.
Maybe I sat back down and I told to the person next to me, how did I do? And she was like, you did really well. The words that were coming out of your mouth were perfect, but you were purple. I was so red.
No.
I was purple. I was so embarrassed. So yes, I was a terrible public speaker. But anyway, I'm in outside sales. One-on-one was actually a lot better when I was selling, and I was on the top of the leaderboard really, really quick.
What was the product? Do you remember?
Financial services.
Okay.
And then I ended up at Santander, where I was an individual contributor. I was selling financial services, and it wasn't fake it till you make it, but I was like, I never needed to know like how the sausage was made. I just needed an overview. I needed to understand what was the benefits of the client, and I could sell anybody. Right. And I never took it personal. If they said no, I would just move on.
Right.
So that was good. And then as I wanted to climb the corporate ladder because I wanted to make more money, because I had this lifestyle that I wanted to live, I had to learn how to be a public speaker. I had to get on those stages, right? I had to be able to speak in front of 200 and 300 people at a sales rally. And corporate really, really, really helped me get comfortable in front of crowds.
So are there classes that they offered, or did you,
Professional development.
And
Right,
it's bootstrapping it. No. I'll tell you what, talk about
So how do you go from being terrified to being confident? Like, what was that journey?
the money. That was it.
Yeah,
The motivation of I wanted to, the title and the money, right? So let me give you an example.
Yeah, because in corporate, like the title is everything. the business card.
Title is everything.
VP of everybody's a VP, but it's like you just want that.
Exactly.
The cachet.
Exactly. And so I'll tell you how supportive they were. So I go to my first sales rally or whatever they called it, and we were all remote. So I've been in a remote environment since 2007 or maybe 2006. And so I go to the sales rally. It's like 400 or 500 people in this place. I know like maybe one person because she was my mentor and my boss. And I'm terrified on the inside. And so I'm like, oh, thank God. I see my mentor walking toward me. She walks right past me. Like she doesn't even
Well, she didn't
know.
just see you. You're invisible.
I'm invisible because she's focused on whoever she wants to network with, right? So I'm like dead. I'm like dying on the inside. I said, what do I do? What does a person do when they feel like that? I make a beeline to the bar. Of course, I go get a drink. I go get a drink. And then this woman from Arkansas, her name is Merica. She comes over to me and she's like, oh my gosh, you look so cute. She compliments me on something. I'm like, oh, thank God I just found my person. And she's like, you want to come sit with us? Yes, I want to come sit with you. And so they weren't, I say all that to say, I didn't feel very supported. And I was really the only person who kind of looked like me. There weren't many Latinas. There weren't many people of color. Merica was Black from Arkansas, so she felt like I knew her. Like we got each other. And so, or I said was, she is from Arkansas and she's Black. And so she became my friend, right? So it felt very much like I was a fish out of water. Number one, it felt terrifying to go up to people that I don't know. And number two, I was the only person that looked like me. And it felt very cliquish in there. It felt very high school. And I didn't know anybody there. So it was terrifying. But again, through the process of me wanting to climb the corporate ladder, I took it upon myself to make sure that I learned how to speak better, that
You knew these were things you had to know how to do to move up, and you wanted to move up.
That's exactly right. That's what they had. And I remember looking at this woman, maybe the VP of sales or whatever she was at the time, thinking, wow, she's like a natural up there. I could never do that.
Never?
That's what I thought at the time. And here I am.
So then, here you are. Now you're coaching people on how to do this.
Now I'm coaching people on executive presence. I'm coaching people on how to communicate, which I was the worst communicator ever. Aside from like not being able to speak to crowds, I was not a good communicator. When I was defensive, I'm either shutting down or lashing all the way out.
Yeah. And what about are you a good poker player? Like your face changes?
Oh, like, no, I'm a typical Latina. You see everything. You know exactly what I'm thinking by my look. Even with the Botox, you still know what I'm thinking.
No.
I mean,
Definitely Ramon.
Yeah, I'm not a good poker player. Like, my kids used to call me Clayface. I wouldn't have to say anything and they could tell, like, if I'm upset or if I'm, whatever emotion is, I'm going to wear it.
Exactly. I used to say I wear my emotions on both my sleeves. Everybody knew what I was thinking.
But I mean, this story makes you so relatable to people that need your help because you're basically describing, I was where you are. Like I was afraid of people. I was afraid of talking. I wasn't a good communicator, and so that plays well. Like I really believe in telling your brand story.
Yeah.
And it's one thing to have the qualifications and the skills and all that, but just I think you make yourself relatable when you share that.
I mean, when you think about it, it's like we could all go out and get a certificate in whatever. Right. It doesn't mean that we actually know how to do it. And I do believe from feedback anyway, that's what sets me apart is that I often get asked, did you take psychology? Yeah. People that don't know that I graduated college, they'll be like, did you graduate with a psychology degree or whatever? And it's like, no, but I've always been interested in people. I have always had like a natural curiosity for the way that we think, for what we're doing. Like, why did you do it that way? Why do you think that way? So I've always had a natural curiosity for people. So I think that's also part of it.
Yeah. And when did you start coaching while you were still in corporate? Like when did you make the switch where you go full-time coaching?
Yes. So I think it happened gradual. It definitely wasn't anything that was like super intentional. Like, that's what I want to do. It happened gradually. And really, I was my first client, right? I started really doing self-development, professional development, making sure that I know how to coach and train my people in a way that's going to resonate. I wanted sustained success. Yeah. I hated having to tell you something over and over and over again. And I hated treating adults like children. And so I knew there had to be something else that I needed to do in order to resonate with them. And so when I was able to get into their head and really understand where they were coming from and how to get them, I hate to use the word motivated because I feel like motivated is kind of like a one shot, but like, what's your interest? How do I get you doing what I need you to do or what we need you to do collectively and me not have to tell you over and over again? And when that started working, then I was like, oh, this feels so much easier. I remember my person who helped me run the team, he came to me one day and was like, Jess, this job just feels like so easy these days. I'm like, thank God you're saying that because it feels super easy for me. I didn't want it to feel hard for you. And then the team also felt like the job was easier. And so really that somebody said, this was a long time ago, I was describing to him what we were doing on my team, and he's like, it sounds like you're creating psychological safety.
Yeah.
And that's what happens. And when you do that, everything gets easier.
Wow. I can see that's the spark of this mindset that you're talking about. And I think Jarvis mentioned something similar when he was here, and it has to do with finding what's in their best interest. Like when you feel like it's in their best interest if we all win, then it becomes more of a mindset. Like they have to be invested.
That's right.
Like getting people to do something is like they need to feel like they're winning as well. If everyone's successful,
they need to feel like they're winning as well, but and that you have their best interests
Yes,
at heart, right?
of course.
But also they need to feel safe enough to tell you, "Oh, I messed up." Right? Because there's nothing more annoying and worse when a person messes up and they're afraid to tell you, so then they wait.
Oh my God, yeah.
So then they wait, and then it takes months, and then it makes it even worse because they waited so long. Meanwhile, this is not even that big of a deal.
Right.
If you would have told me in the beginning.
I listen, and when it happens, it's one thing to say you're creating a safe space to screw up, but when somebody screws up and then tells you, that's the real test.
That is the real test.
Same thing, and we preach that constantly.
Test.
Where
Listen, it's easy to say, but when it happens, you've got to really dig deep.
That's when my clients text me 911. How do I handle this shit?
Exactly. And you're like, did I really create a safe space?
What all joking aside, if your team is waiting to tell you, or you're finding out about the mistakes,
then it's not.
That's
a safe
how
place.
you know
exactly.
there's still some work to be done.
Right.
Yeah.
True. So you start moonlighting as a coach while you're still working.
Yeah.
Like
that did not last very long.
Just because this is the part where I think our listeners can find value, because it's one thing to say, I run this amazing business and I'm a coach, but if we don't tell them how, then it might seem unattainable.
Yes. That's very important. The how is important. Okay, so the straw that broke the camel's back for me, and I had been getting like, how we get signs like, we call it from the universe, from God, from like thoughts in your head that continue popping up, right? So I had this itch I needed something else, and I didn't know if it was going to be within, because Santander is so big, right? I could have moved someplace else. So I didn't know if it was within the organization or if it was what it was. And so I had a mid-year review with my boss, who was very, very picky and very, particular. And during this mid-year review, he says, Jess, like, I don't have anything, no feedback for you. Like, you're doing really great. The team is doing really great. The year before, I had just gotten an 8% raise, which in corporate, that's like massive.
Yeah.
And I had gotten a really big bonus. And he's like, you're at the top of the pay band. We probably have to find you a promotion somewhere, like within the organization. So I was like, all right, cool. That's exciting. Within that next month, they gave a job to somebody else on my team, who actually brought in, like, I ran a $4 billion department. He probably ran like a less than a $2 billion department, right? And so all these other things. So I was like, I had done so much work on myself that I didn't even really take it personal. I was annoyed, but I wasn't upset. And I said, well, that's my sign that I need, this is not the place for me anymore.
Almost like you hit a wall there.
Yeah.
Like he was basically telling you, like, you've gone as far as you can go.
Yeah.
And then you see somebody that on paper is less qualified or wasn't doing as much. I will say
he's amazing.
Yeah.
Like, what's funny is that I'm the one that convinced him to take a management position back in the day. So it wasn't a him thing. It was more of a me thing.
Yeah.
Like, this is a sign that this place is no longer for me.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to force and ask. And then it's like, what could I do better? You already told me I can't do anything better.
Right.
So it was very clear to me I needed to start something on my own. And that's when I started, quote unquote, moonlighting.
Well, that's an awareness, I think, or a moment of grace and clarity.
A moment of clarity. That's exactly what it was for me. It was a moment of clarity, because I think had that happened like years prior, I would have been upset. I would have been asking myself, what did I do wrong? Why did I create this relationship or that relationship? Or I needed to put myself out there more, or. But it wasn't. For me, it was a moment of clarity that said, maybe my time has run out here. And
Right.
they're forcing me, like God, the universe is forcing me to look at things differently.
Right.
That's how I saw it.
And now you mentioned you being your own first client. What was your first paying client? Like, how did you transition over, and how do you even figure out, like, what do you charge and things like that?
Okay, so this is good because, like we're good at a lot of things. People are typically not good at just one thing. And so I went on this retreat soon after that incident, and I was like, well, maybe I should be a coach. I kind of do it now. Like, I do it now with my team. I do it now with peers, whatever. And a lot of my personal friends, like successful friends, would be like, you should be a life coach. Like they would call me.
Probably people you were giving pep talks and
all
then they'd leave.
the time.
It was like a life-changing event.
Literally. Yes, literally. I remember my brother telling me, Jess, you missed your calling. You missed your calling because you needed a show like Jess saved my life. So people had already been telling me to be a life coach. And then I go on this retreat and the girls like my style. They're like, you should be a style coach. And I just sat with it. I've been in sales my whole life, pretty much. Maybe you should be a sales coach. None of those things were resonating for me because what I saw was that I could teach somebody how to sell. It was still really challenging if they didn't have the confidence to do it.
Right.
So when I got in their head and figured out, wait, what's the thought process here? Why do you think the owner doesn't want to see you? That's when it became easier, when I was able to change their mindset. So then I was like, okay, but I don't know if I wanted to be a mindset coach because I also take on a lot of, like, if you tell me a story, some terrible story, like I'm sleeping with that story. So I didn't want to do that either.
You're like an empath.
Very much an empath. Yeah. So it took some time. My first 2 clients were life coach, and one had a very similar situation to me when my son was a teenager, and it was very triggering for me. I was like, okay, this is not. I don't want to do this. Like, I
You find yourself like getting emotional and stuff.
Yeah, and taking it home with me and like worrying and all of that, and I didn't want to do that. And then I said, you know what? And one was life, and the other one was a teacher who was trying to work on her side gig. Like, how does she structure? Because strategy and I worked in a remote corporate environment. So structuring like curriculum or events, like I'd done that the whole time I was there. So for over a decade, right? So those 2 were my first 2 clients. And then I did a group coaching because that's what I did every day. I was in a remote environment. I had group calls all the time. I taught on Zoom all of the time, all of that. So I was like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do a leadership because we all need leadership. We're all leaders even if you're not a people leader, you're still a leader. Right. So I found that if people work on their leadership, it's much easier for them to attain their goals. And so I said, okay, I'm going to start with, I think my first program was the Leadership Accelerator or something like that. And I did it. I hosted a free communication class. So communication's been number 1 on top of my list for always. And then I got clients from there and people I knew, like my friends.
Your own network.
My own network. Yeah.
So I believe in the halo effect. Like, Chris Jarvis is someone I'm closely connected to, but he's closely connected to Jack Canfield. Mm-hmm. So it's like I'm one step away. What are some of the, you mentioned Stephen Covey earlier.
Yeah.
What are some of these, where did you learn some of this craft that you're now sharing with others?
Yeah, so Stephen Covey's definitely one of like my go-to, my gurus, right? Mm-hmm. The other one is Eckhart Tolle. That's also mindset. Yes,
Power of Now.
Well, actually, for me, was the Power of Now is great, but for me, it was The New Earth.
Okay. That was the second one,
which
right?
is the second book, yeah. And the concepts in there are interesting and challenging. It's actually, to your point, right? You could say, he says in his book, you could say everybody says they want peace, right up until somebody cuts them off when they're driving, right? Then it's like this person and that person and what the hell? So the concepts are easy, but difficult. They're easy in theory, difficult in practice.
Yeah. And that's, I could see that, I mean, the mindset of Eckhart Tolle, I mean, the idea that pain doesn't exist. Like in the moment, it's like when you have pain, it's feel like something that already happened.
Yeah.
So it's deep. So I can see how
extremely deep.
I can see how you really kind of honed in on the mindset, because without that, I guess these other things aren't possible.
I can teach you all the strategies in the world,
Right.
and nothing. You can do it today in this moment, but it'll be hard to sustain success because your mindset may not be there. And so I really dig deep also on communication. The way we communicate, vital. I mean, we could change 2 words and the whole conversation will be different. And so that's something, I mean, today, one of my C-suite executives 911'd me, and she's like, I'm getting ready for this.
Is that like the code they text you? Like,
she's
alert?
like,
It reminds me of the beepers back in the day.
Literally.
It's like, it's beeping 911. I better call
Literally,
them
she's
back.
like, I need you ASAP. Can we speak? I'm like, I'll be in the car, but you can call me.
Yeah.
So she's prepping for a conversation with. There's a lot of change going on in her organization right now. She works C-suite executive. In a Fortune 500 company, and there's a lot of change. And she's like, and this woman, her emails, I could tell she's just thinking this, and I can tell she's thinking that, and I can tell this, and I can tell that. I said, okay. We don't really know that, though.
Right. True.
Okay. And so I always focus on, okay, how do we have a curiosity mindset around this? Now, it's easy for me to see it because it's not me, right? So I really help them figure out, okay, how can I make this into a question so that when we have a curiosity mindset, the conversation automatically feels better and it doesn't put the other person on the defensive.
Right.
But, she is a woman of color. Again, not many people like her in the C-suite. And she feels like she has to justify all of those. It's like you can feel like you're doing so well, and then one person triggers your insecurity and makes you feel you're not worthy, or you're not sure if you're not worthy to be there. And that conversation will go left every single time. And she's already there. She's earned her spot.
Right.
She's earned
She's
her
qualified,
spot.
She's
more than qualified. And so, it's more than a pep talk. It's really giving you the skills and the literal verbiage that you can, and I'm like, does it resonate with you? Can you say this? Yeah. And she's like, yes, I can. That's much better. And it lands better. And it actually feels better for us, not only for the other person you're speaking to, but for us.
But you're dealing with, I mean, let's be candid. I mean, you're dealing with, there's levels. There's already a double standard. If a man is aggressive in corporate, he's a leader. If a woman's aggressive, she's bitchy or difficult to manage.
Yeah.
So there's this double standard. And now if you add a woman of color to that,
that's right.
They're dealing with this stereotype that they have an attitude.
That's right.
Whether you're Latina or black, it's like she has an attitude. And it's like, but if it's a man, it's looked assertive, and he's a leader. He's a strong leader, right? It's like this double standard. Now, how do you manage that? Because I think that's what's happening.
Well, that was my real life.
Yeah,
I used to get, because the company was based in the South, and or my division.
But women are supposed to be like passive and submissive, and if you're in corporate, you can't survive.
Yeah. Well, I used to get, you're so New York. Well, that makes sense because I'm from New York, right? And they'd be like, well, you're coming off a little aggressive. I'm like, that's how I get to the top of the leaderboard. Like, I'm in a male-dominated industry. Our clients are men. But what I learned was that there is a balance.
Okay.
And women, the beauty of women is that we can be soft and we can be nurturers and we can be all of those things and still be like the badass, right? We can do both, but finding that kind of balance can be challenging when we're used to doing it, like bootstrapping it, right? Like, and it's me against the world, and it's me against corporate, and it's me against, and I'm going to show them I belong here.
Right.
Right. So the balance between that is really having that curiosity mindset. And I feel like when I really started working on my communication, I actually said more of what was in here than before, because before you didn't want, it was going to come out wrong. Yeah. It was going to come off all the way wrong. So now I actually say everything that is almost, I mean, I don't say everything because I don't believe we have to say everything. I have an opinion on everything, but nobody needs to hear it. But I will have those questions, even like today when I'm like, I don't know, I see things a little bit differently.
And it's okay to do that.
And it's okay. But it didn't feel like I was challenging you, like you need to come to my side. No, it was more like, oh, that's not the way I see it. The way I see it is X.
But it revealed a little bit more to us about your personality. And I think part of it is managing that energy so that it's comes out as curiosity, and
not as like
being defensive or
or
attacking.
aggressive
Yeah.
or like you have it wrong.
Right.
You have it wrong. Like I used to say,
because that makes the other person shut down.
Oh yeah, it's
right?
like, oh, forget it. You don't want to
I'm
tell
out.
this chick. You don't want to tell this chick nothing. But I used to say I speak with like a period at the end of my sentences. But in my head, I felt like, oh, I'm open to other ideas.
It's just so interesting that the power of words, even when you have the written word, a text message,
That's right.
An email, the way that is read tonally can totally change what that communication is versus what the intent was. And even the usage of a word. And I remember one of the hardest things to get used to at first when we first started at Peralta Design, and it was just me and Ramon working in his basement, was the usage of the word we. I had been, in my previous job, I had been so used to using the word I and taking personal responsibility for everything. But then you kind of remove the shield of the organization as a whole, and you make yourself smaller at that point.
Right.
Where we says, well, we're in this together for good or for bad.
Even if it was when it was just me, I would say we, because I just wanted people to feel like they were hiring an agency. Now we really are. But part of it was like, hey, no, we're bigger. We're bigger and we're a team. And it could have been like all remote. Or even when it was just Jorge and I, but I remember would always say, Jorge, change that email so that it's we.
Yeah.
We're a company. Again, it goes back to mindset and feeling that way. So tell us. Go ahead.
No, just to finish the thought is that now it changes the way that I think that it's perceived on the other side.
That's right.
Correct.
Because to the client, they need to know that even though I'm your point of contact, we as a collaborative are doing this.
Right.
We do our weekly kudos and we give a shout out to different people on the team. And that end product was a result of the blood, sweat, and tears of this person and this person and this person and this person. So the we represents not just do we succeed together or fail together, but the we represents, hey, this is a collective effort, and that the hourly rate that you're paying is a blended rate of all these people's efforts. Yeah. And that's part of the value, and that's changed that perception too, I think. So, just the power of words, intent, it is so powerful when you talk about communication. So just being able to realize that, being able to be willing to change, I think is so big.
Yeah. That's why I love working with, I specifically love working with people leaders, because I know the hell that it caused me when I was like not happy at work. And we know, everybody knows the stat, like people typically leave their managers, not their jobs,
bad bosses,
right? Yeah. And I say there's not really a bad boss. It's like we don't get taught on how to lead people. Right. They just don't know how to do it, right? They're just probably doing it the way their other shitty boss taught them, right?
Or you learn how not to treat people when you have a terrible boss.
Yes.
All right, so tell us a bit about. I love the case study with a woman, the C-suite exec that's 911ing you. But what are some other examples of your target clients or the folks that you help?
Yeah, so I always say that I really help the high achieving either entrepreneur or C-suite executive match their accomplishments that they have on the outside with what's going on the inside, because a lot of times they are killing the game, but they don't feel like it in their head. So we work to minimize that negative voice in their head so that they can show up authentically as themselves without worrying, oh, Ramon's in the room now, I have to be a little bit more professional. Oh, Jessica's here, so now I can be a little bit more chill. It's like, be whoever you want to be. And so I'll give you an example of a CIO. The company's actually here in Connecticut. And he says, it's one of our first onboarding calls. And I'm like, you're like a different person at the end of this call. He's like, am I? I said, yeah, you were just like so like buttoned up in the beginning. And he's like, was I? And I'm like, yeah. So what I helped him understand was that showing your personality actually makes me connect with you more. Right. And so he's a global CIO. So as he was going to all of these different areas of the world, he's like, yeah, it felt freeing for him to actually be himself in every space. And it helps the other person connect more. Yeah. And so it's tweaking little things like that, but they make such a huge impact for people with themselves. It's not always about the other person. I always start with self. So I recently did a talk for a large organization out in Chicago, talking about belonging organizations, right? How do we do that? And when we think belonging organizations, there was about 1,000 people globally I did this talk for. We usually think like the company needs to do X in order to make me feel like I belong. But the way we did the talk was, no, what's your personal responsibility to helping you feel like you belong and everyone else feel like they belong? Because a lot of times you walk into this room and it's like, I'm so busy in my head making up some story that right away, oh, I'm going to sit in this little corner and not speak to anybody. And then you're going to say you don't feel like you belong.
But you did that.
But you didn't contribute. You didn't contribute. So I think personal accountability is really important, and really understanding, okay, well, what's my mindset? What story am I telling myself? And is it even true?
Right.
So
that's true.
yeah.
I mean, I think the congruency is what you're speaking of. Like if you're made up of all these circles, like how do you get those circles to all align?
Yeah, I mean, we're all, I think, guilty of like that home persona and then the work persona, right? And to your point, I try to make sure that we can mesh it a bit. But I also feel like sometimes we need to take that work persona, that person that watches what they say, that is a little bit more polite. We need to take that person home. And sometimes...
because our closest... sometimes they catch most of the heat.
They catch all of the heat, exactly. And sometimes that chill, laid-back person that is joking around, that person needs to come to work. So I like to mesh the two so that at home we're being more thoughtful, more intentional about what we're saying, how we're saying it, and maybe even giving ourselves that 24-hour rule. And then at work, we're a little bit more chill. We're showing more of our real personality.
Awesome. So tell us where folks can find out about you, sign up, or I know you've had these these getaways on these islands where you can bring all your girls and all that, and you have these leadership retreats. Tell us about any of those that are coming up. Yeah,
the next retreat is in Morocco. We only have one spot left, and it's actually not until April 1st, 2025. But there's only one spot left for Morocco. So I may do another retreat before that. I'm thinking about it because we have a lot of people on the wait list. So I'd love for people to sign up for the wait list, make sure that they hear about the retreats. They are the trifecta, right? They are personal, professional, and spiritual growth. So we are really working on all of the above to get you fully in alignment and fully able to reach your goals. And so I also do one-on-one coaching. I don't take on too many people, so those sell out pretty quickly, but I still have one spot left for the rest of the year. And then I have a group coaching program called Communicate to Lead, where we really dive in on how we communicate to ourselves, how we communicate to others, navigating difficult conversations, and presenting and persuading.
Excellent. And you mind sharing some of the handles or your URL and things like that?
So I hang out on Instagram a lot. So you can find me at Coach Jessica Rivera, and then on LinkedIn, Jessica Rivera. But there are a lot of them. So put Coach New York and you'll find me. Excellent. And what's your domain? Yes, my website is jrcoaching.net. All right, and that's under, you're revamping it, I hear. Yes. It is under, it's being workshopped right now, but yeah, they can find me there. Excellent, but I think you're putting out a lot of great content on LinkedIn and definitely on Instagram. Your videos, keep them coming. I think you're changing lives. You're using your gifts to help others, so keep doing it, keep paying it forward. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. This was so much fun. Yeah, this was, and it could go on and on and on, and I'm only wrapping it up so we may have to do a part 2 because I really enjoyed the conversation. Yeah, same here. Anytime. All right, everybody. Thank you for listening to this episode of Mission Control. Until next time, this is your host, Ramon Peralta with Peralta Design, and we launch brands.